The funeral flowers had already begun to wilt when I found John's old phone. I sat alone at the kitchen table, surrounded by half-empty casserole dishes left by neighbors whose names I barely remembered. Staring at the device like it was something illicit, it had been buried in the back of his desk drawer, tucked away like a secret he couldn't bear to confront. The screen was cracked in one corner. Typical Jonah was too stubborn to fix anything that still technically worked. My fingers shook as I powered it on. Not from grief, no. This was something older and colder, something that had coiled in my chest over the decades. There was one new voicemail, just one, read, waiting. The confirmation of what I'd long suspected. For years, I'd noticed things. The late-night grocery runs that took far too long. The way he folded certain receipts so carefully and slipped them into his wallet. His voice softening when he thought I couldn't hear him, talking to someone on the phone, asking if they had enough. I'd chalked it up to work. He ran a small construction crew, always watching out for his guys. But that didn't explain the children's toys I'd once found behind the seat of his truck, or the way he went quiet whenever I mentioned taking a trip, like the thought of leaving town turned his blood to lead. The message was 3 days old, 3 days before the heart attack that killed him outside the Piggly Wiggly. I pressed play, my finger trembling over the speaker like it might scorch me. "Mr. John," a small voice asked. "This is Emma. Mama's real sick again, and she won't go to the hospital. She keeps coughing up that red stuff, and she's real hot. Tommy and Jake are scared. Can you come, please? We don't know what to do." The message ended in a hushed sob, so faint it might have been the phone's static. I stared at the screen, the bottom dropping out of everything I thought I knew. Not Claire, not some sultry woman who'd drained our savings and stolen his heart. Emma, a child, no older than 8. She'd called my husband in the kind of panic that meant she trusted him, believed he could fix things, believed he was hers. The coffee in my mug had gone cold. Outside, Mrs. Patterson was probably eyeing my drawn curtains with suspicion. The house felt strange, too big and too small, all at once, like I was living in the hollowed-out shell of a life I'd misunderstood. I dialed the number. It rang twice. Then a woman answered, her voice ragged and thin. "Hello, is this Claire?" I asked. A pause. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Whitney Brown," I said. "I'm John's wife." I heard her breath catch on the other end. She'd been waiting for this call, maybe praying it would never come. "Mrs. Brown, I can explain." "No," I said, more calmly than I felt. "I don't need excuses. I need to understand." Emma left a message on John's phone. She said her mother was sick. "That's my daughter," she said, and then the dam broke. "I'm so sorry. I collapsed yesterday." She must have called him. They didn't know what else to do. "I'm at Mercy General." I could hear her crying, trying to hide it. "I'm so sorry about John. He was everything to us." The words cut deep. Everything to us. While I was simmering in suspicion, he had been someone's lifeline, someone's hope. "I'll be right there," I said, before I had time to think. "You don't have to." "What room?" 314, she whispered. "But really, you don't need to. We'll manage. John always said we shouldn't burden you. He said you were the strongest woman he'd ever known. He talked about you all the time." I ended the call before she could say anything else. I couldn't take another word about his secret kindness. Not yet. The drive to the hospital passed in a haze, golden trees blurring past, memories of John layered with meaning I'd never understood. His insistence on keeping the old truck. His quiet when I ranted about money. How he never defended himself, just looked tired. I'd thought he was withholding, stingy. I never guessed he might have been feeding someone else's children, paying for someone else's survival. The hospital reeked of antiseptic and exhaustion. I followed the signs until I reached room 314, walking slower with every step. Through the small glass window in the door, I saw Hercler, pale and frail, an oxygen mask pressed to her face. She looked like something that had been blown sideways by life and barely survived. Her hair clung to the pillow, her face too still to be peaceful. Beside her sat a little girl, Emma, brown hair in a tangle, wearing a sweatshirt too big and shoes that had seen better years. She was clutching a stuffed rabbit so threadbare it looked more like a scrap of cloth. Her lips were moving, whispering something private into its ear. A story, a prayer. I knocked gently. Emma looked up. Her eyes were enormous, too knowing for her age, the kind that had learned to scan adult faces for kindness or threat. She held the rabbit tighter, rising halfway from the chair. "Are you Mrs. Brown?" she asked. Yes, I said, stepping into the room. You must be Emma. She nodded slowly. Then, studying me with a sort of solemn reverence, she said, Mr. John said you made the best chocolate chip cookies in the world. He always looked sad when he talked about you. I felt something twist inside me, sharp and unrelenting. I hadn't baked cookies in years, gotten tired of the mess, the crumbs, the way John always ate them before I got one. I never imagined he'd been giving them away. That maybe he'd saved each batch for kids who thought he was a hero. Maybe he was. Maybe he still is. I managed to say I should make them more often. Emma's grip on the rabbit eased just slightly. Are you here to take us away? The question caught me off guard. Take you away. When grown-ups in suits come to the hospital, they usually want to take kids away, she said simply. Mr. John said if anything happened to him, we should call you. He said you were good people, and you'd help us. But Tommy said, maybe, you wouldn't want to because we're not really family. My throat tightened. In the bed, Claire stirred, her eyelids fluttering before she tried to sit up. The effort triggered a coughing fit that left her gasping and clutching the blankets. Don't, I said, moving toward her. Don't try to talk yet. She pulled the oxygen mask away, revealing pale skin and sunken cheeks, bones that looked like they didn't belong under skin anymore. You came, she rasped. John would have wanted me to, I said, sitting beside her. He loved you so much. Claire's voice was little more than air. He said you were the only thing that made him feel like he had a real home. He never wanted to hurt you, but he couldn't just walk away when he found us at the grocery store that day. We were starving. Emma was crying. He just started helping. I turned to Emma, who was studying us both like she wasn't sure which way the wind would blow. Something shifted in me, then something frozen and buried under years of resentment and habit. How long has he been helping you? I asked. 2 years, Claire whispered. We've been living in the basement of an old house on Maple Street. The landlord doesn't know we're there, but it's dry, warm enough. John paid for groceries every week. Sometimes clothes or toys for the kids. He fixed the heater. He read to them every Sunday. Every Sunday. The Sundays he said he needed time to himself. That he was at the hardware store. Or checking job sites. Or just driving. He'd been reading bedtime stories to children who weren't his, creating a life parallel to mine. A life I'd never seen. Where are the boys now? I asked. With Mrs. Presley downstairs. She's been watching them while I'm here, but she can't keep them much longer. She's got grandkids of her own. The weight of it all settled around me like snowfall, gentle but heavy. 3 children, a sick mother, a secret that had died with John, and a silence that had grown in his place. I thought about my empty house, the casserole dishes I'd ignored, the quiet that filled every room since the funeral. Emma, I said, turning toward her. Would you like to come home with me? The question floated in the room between us, fragile and full of risk. Emma looked at her mother, then back at me, and there it was, that flicker. Hope. Small, careful, like a sapling growing through stone. She was about to answer when Claire's monitor started screaming. The next 20 minutes were chaos. Nurses flooding the room, voices rising, machines beeping, bodies in motion. I pressed myself against the wall, gripping Emma's icy hand, whispering lies like a prayer. It's okay. She's going to be okay. I didn't know if I believed it. Eventually, the storm passed. Claire's breathing steadied, the nurses retreated, and I found myself pulled aside by a woman with kind eyes and tired shoulders. Are you family? She asked, her eyes darting toward Emma. I hesitated. I'm here for them. What's wrong with her? The doctor studied me for a moment, weighing truth against responsibility. Severe malnutrition. Dehydration. Pneumonia. Her body's been in survival mode for a long time. We're treating the infection, but she needs real rest, real food, stability. How long will she be here? 2 weeks, maybe longer. The real concern is after. Does she have somewhere to go? Family. I looked over at Emma, pretending not to listen but hanging on every word. She has 3 children. And a basement. That's what she has. The doctor's expression softened, but her voice stayed clinical. We'll need to contact social services. The kids will need placement. No. It came out too sharp. Emma flinched. I softened. That won't be necessary. They'll stay with me, ma'am. I hear you, but it's not that simple. There are procedures. Background checks, home visits, legal custody. They're not someone else's children. I didn't recognize the steadiness in my voice. My husband cared for this family for 2 years. He would have wanted me to do the same. She looked skeptical. I couldn't blame her. She'd probably heard 100 versions of promises that broke like glass under pressure. Then Emma's voice cut through the quiet. Mrs. Brown, are Tommy and Jake okay? Everything else faded. 2 little boys were downstairs with a stranger, waiting to hear if their world was ending. Let's go find them, I said, holding out my hand. Emma hesitated, casting one last look at her sleeping mother. Claire was resting easier now, her chest rising steadily, her skin less gray. She'll be here when we get back, I promised. But your brothers need to know you're okay. Emma nodded and slipped her hand into mine, and together, we walked out of the room. Presley was exactly as I'd imagined, small, silver-haired, with soft hands and the quiet, steady presence of someone used to tending fragile things. She sat at a hospital cafeteria table with 2 boys who looked like smaller, younger echoes of Emma. Tommy, maybe 6, had the same solemn eyes, the same guarded way of studying the adults around him. Jake, no older than 4, was bent over a coloring book, his tongue sticking out in focus, broken crayons strewn across the table. You must be Mrs. Brown, Presley said as she rose. John spoke of you often. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you, I replied, my gaze drifting back to the boys. Their clothes were clean but worn, and Tommy kept one hand protectively on Jake's shoulder. How are they? Scared, she said gently. They don't understand why their mother is sick. And they're still waiting for Mr. John to show up. I've had them since yesterday, but I can't keep them past tonight. My daughter expects me to watch her kids tomorrow. Jake looked up, his eyes brightening the moment he spotted Emma. Emmy, is Mama better? Emma sat beside him, her posture slipping from composed to something softer. She's still sick, but the doctors are helping? When is Mr. John coming? Tommy asked quietly. Mama said he'd take care of us if something happened. The question broke something inside me. They were waiting for someone who would never arrive. And it was me, only me, who could tell them that. Tommy, I said, kneeling so we were face to face. Mr. John was in an accident. He can't come anymore. His expression didn't change at first, just went still. Did he die? Yes. Jake's crayon stopped mid-stroke. Emma took Tommy's hand. In the hospital's bright, sterile light, the 3 of them sat in silence, letting that truth settle over them like a heavy blanket. But I'm here, I said softly, and I want to help. The way Mr. John would have wanted. Tommy's gaze was steady. He was measuring me, like a boy who had already learned that promises didn't always last. Are you going to send us away? No, the word came out firm, unwavering. You're coming home with me. Mrs. Presley blinked. Mrs. Brown, that's very kind, but surely the procedures can wait, I said. They need a place to sleep tonight. Everything else, we'll handle later. The next hour passed in a blur of logistics. I called Harold Baxter, my lawyer, who had managed John's affairs and understood me well enough to listen without judgment. Then Dr. Martinez, explaining I was assuming temporary custody and would follow up with social services to formalize it. Finally, the grocery store, ordering more than I had in months. By evening, I was driving 3 children toward the house that had felt like a tomb for 3 days. Emma rode up front, still clinging to her rabbit, while the boys sat in the back, whispering. Tommy asked practical questions about the house rules, beds, how long they'd be allowed to stay. Jake said nothing, just stared out the window, thumb in his mouth. When we pulled into the driveway, Emma gasped. It's so big. It wasn't. Just a modest 3-bedroom ranch John and I bought when the future felt expansive. But 2 children, who had lived in a basement, it probably looked like a palace. There's a yard, Tommy said in awe. With a swing set. John built it, I said. It might creak a little, but it still works. Inside, the air felt warmer with their presence. Jake ran his fingers across the couch like it was made of clouds. Emma lingered in the kitchen doorway, eyes wide at the stocked fridge and the cookie jar on the counter. Tommy hovered near the hallway, cautious and alert. Are you hungry? I asked, already knowing the answer. We had crackers at the hospital, Emma said politely. That's not dinner. I pulled ingredients from the fridge. Grilled cheese, okay. Comfort food, okay, she said. Why don't you show your brothers around while I make it? They moved through the house slowly, reverently, whispering like they were afraid to disturb the peace. I heard them react to each discovery, the spare rooms, the deep bathtub, the dry basement with John's old tools. Their voices reminded me what life sounded like. At dinner, they approached the table hesitantly. Jake climbed into his chair and began eating instantly. Emma and Tommy waited, watching me. "It's okay," I said. "Eat as much as you want." Silence followed, filled only by the sound of chewing. I watched them, and something stirred in me, something unfamiliar, but not unwelcome, a sense of being needed again. "Mrs. Brown," Emma asked finally. "What are we supposed to call you?" The question took me by surprise. "What would you like to call me?" "Mr. John called you Whitney," Tommy said. He said it was a pretty name. "Then call me Whitney," I said. "Are we going to see Mama tomorrow?" Jake asked, his voice small. "Yes, we'll go every day until she's better, and then we'll go home," Emma asked. I looked at them, faces full of tentative trust. That word again, home. It carried more than bricks and walls. It meant safety, love, permanence. Everything they'd never been guaranteed. "We'll figure it out," I said. "But you're safe here. For as long as you need." Later, after baths and blankets, after reading a story from one of John's old books, I sat alone in the living room. The coloring books were scattered on the coffee table. Little shoes sat by the door. And in the soft rhythm of breathing from down the hall, the house felt lived in again. My phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Martinez. "Claire's condition has stabilized." Claire's eyes found mine over her children's heads, and something passed between ooze recognition, maybe even peace. She looked stronger, though her voice was still raspy when she said, "They look happy. Safe." "They are," I replied quietly. "They were scared, but they're doing okay." Sandra Walsh cleared her throat from her place near the door, clipboard still in hand. "Ms. Davidson, I'm Sandra Walsh. Social Services, I need to speak with you about your children's placement." Claire tensed, her hand reflexively reaching for Emma's. "It's all right," I said, stepping forward. "She just needs to hear it from you. That they're not alone, that you trust me." Claire nodded slowly. "I do," she said, her voice firmer now. "I trust Whitney. She's John's wife. He always told me if something ever happened, I should make sure the kids ended up with her. He said she was strong, kind, that she'd know what to do." Sandra's pen paused mid-note. "And you're saying, on record, that you approve of Mrs. Brown assuming temporary custody?" "Yes," Claire said without hesitation. "She's the only person I'd want them with if I can't care for them myself." There it was, the truth, plain and powerful. The words that, legally, opened a door, and, emotionally, closed a wound. Sandra scribbled quickly, then looked up. "I'll need to return to the home for inspection later this afternoon, and Mrs. Brown will need to come to our office tomorrow to begin the paperwork." "We'll be there," I said. Emma climbed onto the side of the hospital bed and gently tucked the blanket around her mother's legs. "We'll come every day, Mama. Until you're all better." "I know, baby," Claire whispered, kissing the top of her head. "I know." Tommy took her hand on one side. Jake leaned against her on the other. And for a long, quiet moment, they simply sat like that, for people who had lost so much, trying to rebuild something that looked like family. As we left the hospital, the sun was just beginning to rise, spilling pale gold light across the pavement. Emma held my hand on one side, Tommy the other, and Jake trailed just behind, dragging his stuffed rabbit across the tile. We walked to the car as a unit. A patchwork of grief, love, and fragile hope. Sandra Walsh stood by her own vehicle, papers tucked under one arm. "We'll talk soon, Mrs. Brown." "Whitney," I said, offering a smile that was neither warm nor cold. "Call me Whitney." She gave a small nod, the kind of gesture that signaled understanding, even if it wasn't agreement. The children climbed into the car, buckling themselves in with the practiced rhythm of kids used to fending for themselves. As I started the engine, Emma looked at me from the passenger seat. "Can we make pancakes again tomorrow?" "Yes," I said, the answer easy and true. "Every morning, if you want." And as I drove them back to the house, I realized that in the space of 2 days, everything had changed. I had gone from widow to guardian, from silence to laughter, from loneliness to chaos. The road ahead would be long and tangled, with rules, decisions, and the ghosts of everything we'd lost. But for the first time in years, I was no longer afraid of the unknown. Because these children weren't a burden. They were the beginning of something new. The one about the velveteen rabbit. "Mr. John's favorite," Claire said softly, her eyes meeting mine over the children's heads. Sandra Walsh cleared her throat. "Miss Davidson, I'm Sandra Walsh from Child Protective Services. I need to discuss the living arrangements for your children. Claire's expression changed in an instant, tired eyes sharpening. What about them? They're currently staying with Mrs. Brown without proper authorization. We need to discuss alternative placement. No. Her voice, though weak, was unwavering. They stay with Whitney. Ms. Davidson, I understand your preference, but we need to ensure the children's safety. Their safety. Claire tried to sit up, her face tightening with pain. Where was their safety when we were living in a basement? When I went days without food so they could eat? Whitney Brown is the only person, besides John, who's ever helped us without expecting anything in return. But Mrs. Brown has no experience with children. She has experience with love, Claire interrupted. She knows what it's like to lose something and still get up the next morning. She understands what it means to protect what's precious. She looked at me again, and her voice dropped. John told me about you. He said you were the strongest woman he'd ever known. That if anything happened to him, you'd know what to do. The words settled over me like a blow and a bomb. John had trusted me with a truth I didn't know I was ready for, but here I was, standing in it. I can provide character references, I said to Sandra. Neighbors, our pastor, my husband's business partners. I'll pass any background check. I can adapt my home for 3 children. But I won't let you take them away from the only sense of stability they've had since their lives were appended. Sandra glanced at her clipboard. Then at the children gathered around their mother's bed, Emma, holding Claire's hand. Tommy leaning against the rail, Jake curled up at her side. There would be conditions, she said at last. Regular home visits, counseling, medical records, educational tracking. And if Ms. Davidson becomes well enough to resume custody, then we'll handle that when it happens, I said, but until then, they're safe with me. Claire looked at me, voice almost gone now. Whitney, you need to know. John was going to tell you. About us, he'd been talking about it for weeks. He was planning to bring us to meet you, the day he died. The air left my lungs. He'd been ready to bring his secret into the light, to share the burden, to trust me with the truth. He said you'd been sad, Claire continued, said the house felt too quiet. That maybe we could help each other. He told me you always wanted children. I had. So much so that the silence of infertility had settled like fog between John and me. We never talked about it after a while, we just lived around it. He was right, I whispered. I was sad. I was lonely. I just never knew how to say it. Emma tugged gently at my sleeve. Whitney, are we going to be okay? I looked down at her, at the hope clinging to her voice. At Tommy's wary gaze, and Jake's sleepy truestand, something clicked into place. Something long broken was suddenly, quietly whole. Yes, I said, we're going to be okay. Sandra made her notes, scheduled visits, and left with a promise to expedite the paperwork. Harold Baxter squeezed my shoulder, promising to handle every legal detail. Claire drifted to sleep, her hands still wrapped around Jake's, and I sat there, in the pale light of a hospital room filled with quiet beeping and muffled giggles, knowing that John's story hadn't ended with his death. It had only just begun. 3 weeks into our new life, I discovered Emma wasn't sleeping. It was just past 2 in the morning when I heard the soft creak of the hallway floor. I'd been lying awake, listening to the sounds of this house, transforming Jake's muffled tossing, Tommy's quiet breathing, Emma's shifting when the nightmares came. I found her in the kitchen, perched at the table with John's old tool manual opened in front of her. Brow furrowed, eyes squinting in the soft light from the stove. Emma, I said gently. What are you doing, sweetheart? She jumped, trying to shut the book. I'm sorry. I know I'm not supposed to be up. I couldn't sleep. I wanted to learn how to fix things. I sat beside her. Her face looked pale, tired. Her small hands trembled slightly. Why do you want to learn about fixing things? She looked down. Because Mr. John always fixed everything. The heater, the leak in the ceiling, the broken stair. He always made things better. And now he's gone. What if something breaks here? What if we're too much trouble and you don't want to keep us? The words landed like a punch, sharp and quiet. This little girl had lived so long with the fear of being unwanted that she was already planning how to earn her place. Emma, I said, waiting for her eyes to meet mine. You don't have to fix anything. That's not your job. Your job is to be 8 years old. But what if nothing, I said, gently closing the manual. You're not responsible for holding this family together. I am. That's what adults do. We take care of children. Not the other way around. She stared at me in the dim light, trying to decide if she could believe me. Mama used to say that too, she said softly. But then she got sick. And I had to help. I had to grow up. I know you did, I said. And you did it beautifully. But you don't have to anymore. I've got you now. She bit her lip. Promise? The word was fragile, a thread of hope she was afraid to pull. Promise, I whispered, and pulled her into my arms. She let herself lean into me, then finally, completely, and I held her until her breathing steadied and her small body relaxed against mine. She fell asleep like that, and I carried her back to bed. As I tucked her in, I kissed her forehead and smoothed the hair from her face. In that moment, with the shadows soft around us and the quiet peace of a house that finally felt full, I knew we were already becoming a family, and I wasn't letting go. Her voice was so small, so hopeful, it nearly broke my heart. I promise, I said. I warmed a mug of milk and stirred in a little honey, something my mother had always made for me when sleep wouldn't come. Emma and I sat together at the kitchen table in the quiet, just the two of us, while the October wind rattled the windows. Inside, the house felt safe, wrapped in a kind of warmth I hadn't realized we'd created. Whitney, Emma said after a while, her voice hesitant but clear, can I ask you something? Anything. Were you sad before we came here? The question caught me off guard. Children, I was beginning to understand, had no patience for evasions. They cut to the core of things grown-ups spent decades learning to hide. Yes, I said honestly. I was very sad because Mr. John died, but I think I was sad before that, too. I just didn't know how to say it. Emma nodded like it made perfect sense. Mama was sad, too, even before she got sick. She used to cry when she thought we weren't looking. But she's been smiling more now. At the hospital, she was right. In the past 3 weeks, Claire's recovery had been extraordinary. The doctors credited medicine, food, and rest, but I knew it was more than that. Her peace came from knowing her children were safe. The tension that used to live in her shoulders had eased. Her laugh had returned in soft fits. Her cough had nearly vanished. She sat upright now, eating meals she hadn't tasted in months. She's getting better because she knows you're okay, I said. That's what mothers do. We worry about our children more than we worry about ourselves. Emma tilted her head. Are you like our mother now? The question hovered between us, delicate and brave, threaded with all the complexity our situation couldn't explain away. Legally, I was still just a temporary guardian, but emotionally, I'd crossed that line weeks ago. I'm like your family, I said softly. And family takes care of each other. The next morning, just as I was zipping up Jake's jacket, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, I found an older man with kind eyes and calloused hands standing beside a woman, around my age, her hair streaked with gray, her smile hesitant. Mrs. Brown. The man said, I'm Frank Davidson. This is my wife Ruth, Claire's parents. Emma froze beside me. Tommy stepped instinctively in front of Jake. The house, so full of light moments earlier, felt instantly heavier. We heard about Claire being in the hospital, Ruth said gently. We came as soon as we could. Silence stretched in the doorway. Emma reached for my hand, her grip tight. I squeezed it, grounding both of us. Where have you been? I asked. The words were sharper than I intended, but the protective urge had taken root deep and fierce. Frank's shoulders slumped. We had a falling out with Claire a few years ago, when she married Jake's father. We didn't approve. Thought he was trouble. We said things we shouldn't have. Things we didn't mean. When he died, she reached out, but we were still too hurt, too proud, and we've regretted it every day since. Ruth stepped forward, eyes misting. When we heard she was sick, that the children, her gaze moved over Emma, Tommy, and Jake, seeing the warmth in their cheeks. Their clean clothes, the closeness they held to me like a shield. Are you taking care of them? Yes, I said simply. Thank God, Frank whispered. We've been so worried, but we didn't know how to reach her. She wouldn't take our calls. Can you blame her? I asked, before I could stop myself. She needed you. She needed help. And you turned your backs. Frank winced but didn't deny it. You're right, we failed her. We failed all of them, but we're here now, and we want to help. Emma tugged gently at my sleeve. Whitney, who are they? I crouched beside her. They're your mama's parents, I said. Your grandparents. Emma looked at them, eyes wide and cautious. I thought we didn't have any. Ruth's voice trembled. You do. You always have. We were just Too late getting here. The confusion on Emma's face was almost too much to bear. I could see her trying to reconcile these strangers at the door with the grandparents she'd never known. With the idea that people who should have been there simply weren't. Can we talk to Claire? Frank asked quietly. We just want a chance to make it right. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked down at Emma, at the worry still carved into her young face, and wondered if this was another risk worth taking. Then I looked at Ruth's trembling hands, Frank's downcast eyes, and saw something that looked like genuine remorse. Get your coats, I said gently to the children. We'll visit the hospital together. The parents I needed when Jake's father died. I wanted them. I wanted not to have spent 2 years struggling alone, too proud to beg for help. Claire looked up at me then, her eyes glassy with tears she hadn't let fall. But I can't go back. And I don't know if I can trust them not to hurt my children the way they hurt me. You don't have to decide today, I said gently, or tomorrow, or next week. You get to take the time you need. She nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in her throat. Whitney, can I ask you something? Of course. What happens when I get out of here? I know you've been amazing with the children. Truly. But they're my responsibility. I can't just what? I can't just let you take over my life because I was too sick to handle it. I heard the pain behind her words more than pain. Fear, the raw, unspoken terror of a mother who thought that accepting help meant she had failed. Nobody's taking over anything, I said quietly. But I've fallen in love with your children, Claire. They're part of me now. They're my family, too. So I think we need to figure out how to make this work. Together. She studied my face, her expression a careful blend of hope and skepticism. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we stop thinking about this as temporary. Maybe John didn't just help you because he had a good heart. Maybe he brought us together for something bigger. Maybe we can help each other. Claire was quiet for a long time. Then, softly, she asked, You want us to live with you? Permanently? I want us to be a family, I said. However that looks, even though I come with 3 kids, medical bills, and no way to pay you back. Especially because of that. That evening, after bath time and bedtime stories, while Emma read aloud to Tommy and Jake splashed in the tub, I thought about our conversation. The future was murky. There would be forms, adjustments, the messy tangle of shared parenting, but, for the first time in years, the unknown didn't scare me. It felt like possibility. Later, as I was tucking Jake into bed, the phone rang. It was Dr. Martinez. Mrs. Brown, she said. I'm calling with good news. Claire's most recent tests came back clear. She'll be ready for discharge in a few days. That's wonderful, I said, and I meant it. She also asked me to call you. She wanted to know if the offer still stands. What offer? To be a family. I looked around. The house, at the living room scattered with blocks and toy cars, at the refrigerator covered in crayon drawings, at the hallway lined with shoes too small for John to have ever worn. Tell her yes, I said softly. Tell her we're ready whenever she is. As I hung up the phone, I realized John's secret hadn't been a betrayal. It had been a gift. A seed he'd quietly planted and trusted me to grow when the time came. Claire came home on a crisp Thursday morning in November. Just as the last golden leaves floated from the maple trees and the air smelled like the beginning of winter. The kids had helped me prepare her room, fresh sheets on the bed, a new lamp by the window, and a small vase of chrysanthemums from the garden John once tended, a garden I'd ignored for years. Not anymore. Emma hadn't slept much the night before. She'd been caught in the push-pull of excitement and anxiety. Tommy had cleaned his room twice, lining up his shoes and restacking his books. Jake, ever simple, had asked only, will Mama still be sick when she comes home? When I told him no, he smiled and went back to building castles out of blocks and cereal boxes. When the taxi pulled into the driveway, all 3 children pressed against the window, eyes wide. Claire emerged slowly, leaning on the open door like she was testing her strength. She looked thinner, but steadier. Her eyes swept across the yard, then up to the house. And I saw in her face the same fragile cocktail of gratitude and uncertainty that I'd been carrying since this began. The kids burst out the door before I could stop them, colliding into her with careful, breathless hugs. Mama, Whitney taught me how to make pancakes, Jake declared. And Emma learned to braid her own hair, Tommy said, tugging Emma's sleeve, and Tommy can tie his shoes now, Emma added, proud and protective. Claire's eyes met mine across the swirl of their joy. And I saw her wrestling with the same questions I'd asked myself. Does accepting help mean weakness? Is it okay to be grateful for love born out of pain? Welcome home, I said quietly. Thank you, she whispered, and in her voice, I heard years of waiting. The first few days were delicate, like learning a new dance. Claire moved through the house like a guest, asking before making tea, apologizing for staying up late. The children hovered in a tug-of-war, between their mother and me wanting her attention, craving my consistency, afraid to seem like they were choosing. One evening, I found Claire crying in the kitchen. The children were at the table doing homework. She was staring at a grocery list I'd scribbled on a sticky note: milk, bread, apples, chicken. This, she said, her voice trembling, this ordinary list. For 2 years, I've lived in fear, choosing between rent and food, rationing meals, lying awake wondering how to feed my kids. And now it's just here, like it's normal. Like it's always been this easy. I sat down beside her. It must be overwhelming. I don't know how to just be. I don't know how to live without fear. I've been in survival mode for so long, I don't remember what comes after survival. You learn, I said. We'll learn together. She looked at me, eyes rimmed red. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Always. Do you regret it, taking us in, changing your life for a family that isn't really yours? The question sat between us like a stone. I thought about who I was before. A woman wandering through rooms that echoed, a widow with more silence than purpose. Suspicious, tired, alone. Then I thought of now. Of Jake's drawings. Of Tommy's endless questions. Of Emma's fierce hugs. Of bedtime stories and spilled cereal and the joyful chaos that had breathed life into this place. Claire, I said, gesturing toward the living room. Look. She turned. Emma was leaning over Tommy's math worksheet. Jake was on the floor, building a structure held together by blocks, tape, and imagination. A month ago, this house was a tomb, I said. Quiet, perfect, lifeless. John and I just moved through it, ghosts pretending to live. And now it's full of noise, and mess, and love. I don't regret it. Not for a second. She smiled, through her tears, and I saw it then, peace beginning to take root where fear had lived. We were becoming something new. Not a patchwork family. A real one, stitched together by love, and grief, and choice. And for the first time in a very long time, we were home. We used to speak in polite sentences and sleep in separate beds. The silence between us wide and well-worn because we had forgotten how to bridge the distance. But your children didn't just change my life, Claire, they saved it. Claire's eyes filled, her breath catching at the edges. But the sacrifice, what sacrifice? I interrupted gently. I sleep better now, because I know someone needs me in the morning. I cook real meals again because there are people to feed. I laugh every day because Jake tells awful jokes, and Emma draws pictures of our family and tapes them proudly to the fridge. What exactly am I sacrificing? She didn't answer at first, her gaze lowering in thought. Then, slowly, she said, it's hard to believe we could be a gift instead of a burden. Then let me help you learn that too. The real breakthrough came a week later, during a spat over Misty the stray cat who'd adopted us. The same week Claire came home. Emma and Tommy were arguing over whose turn it was to feed her. The shouting grew louder until Emma burst out. I've been taking care of everyone forever. I'm tired of being responsible for everything. Claire instinctively moved to intervene, ready to smooth it over, like always, but I reached out and touched her arm. Let me, I whispered. I sat beside Emma while Tommy sulked on the couch, and Jake kept playing, unbothered. You're absolutely right, I told her. You have been taking care of everyone, and you've done an amazing job. Emma folded her arms, pouting slightly. Then why is everyone mad at me? They're not, I said, with a small smile. And you know what? You're fired. She blinked, confused. What? You're fired from being responsible for everyone else. Your new job is to be 8 years old. Tommy's job is to be 6. Jake's is to be 4. All the adult jobs making sure everyone's okay, that there's food, that the world isn't falling apart, those belong to me and your mama. That's what we're here for. But what? If no what ifs, I said gently. Adults handle the what ifs. Kids handle being kids. Her expression shifted, first doubt, then something like understanding, and finally, relief. A deep, visible exhale of tension I hadn't realized she was holding. So, if something breaks, I don't have to fix it. Nope, adult job. And if Tommy has a nightmare, Also, an adult job. And if there's not enough money for food. Absolutely an adult job. She paused, then whispered, "What if I forget how to be a kid? Then we'll teach you, all of us, together." That night, after the kids were tucked into bed, Claire and I sat by the fire with mugs of tea. The conversation drifted from doctor appointments and Christmas gifts to something deeper: the shape of our future. "I want to help," Claire said suddenly. "I want to work. To contribute. I don't want to feel like a charity case." "You're not," I said. "You're family." "I know you keep saying that," she murmured, "but I need to feel useful. Like I have something that's mine." I understood. Pride was complicated, but no less vital than love. "What did you do before?" "I was a bookkeeper. Small businesses mostly. I was good at it." "There's a home office upstairs," I said. "John never used it. It's got a desk, a good chair, a decent computer, printer, light. You could start something there. Set your hours. Be here when the kids need you." Her eyes widened. "You'd let me start a business in your house." "Our house," I corrected. And yes, we sat for a while in warm, companionable silence. Watching the fire, I'd learned to build another new skill, born of necessity and love. Eventually, Claire said softly, "There's something I need to tell you." "About John." My chest tightened. "What is it?" "The day he died, he was supposed to meet us at the store. He was going to help with groceries, then he was going to bring us here. To meet you." "I know," I said. "You told me, but I didn't tell you what he said before that. The last time we talked, he told me he was tired of keeping secrets, that it wasn't fair to you, or to us. He said you deserved to know about the family he'd chosen, and we deserved to know about the woman he'd loved for 37 years. Tears rose before I could stop them. "So he was going to tell me." "He was terrified," she said, "afraid you'd be angry, that you'd think he was careless with money or reckless. But he also said you were the strongest person he knew, that if anyone could understand why he'd done what he did, it would be you." I would have been angry, I admitted. Not for helping you, but for hiding it. For thinking I couldn't be trusted with something so big. "He knew that, but he also knew you'd come around. He said you had the biggest heart, just one you kept guarded because you'd been hurt before." I thought about the woman. I used to be tight-lipped, cautious, afraid of giving too much. Then I thought of who I'd become. Open, fierce, protective, present, alive. "He was right," I said. Claire reached across the couch and took my hand. "I love you, Whitney, not because you saved us. Not even because you take care of us. But because you've become real family. I love you, too," I whispered. Completely. Outside, the November wind rattled the windows. But inside, the house was warm, alive with laughter, love, and second chances. Upstairs, 3 children slept soundly, no longer bracing for disaster. In the kitchen, Emma's drawings filled the fridge like bright, messy promises of everything we were building. And in the living room, 2 women who had found each other through grief, healing, and the quiet legacy of a good man's secret kindness sat by the fire and dreamed together. It wasn't perfect, it would never be easy, but it was real, and it was ours. John's secret had died with him, but his love had not. That gift lived on in this home, in the laughter echoing through its halls, in the bonds forged by choice, instead of blood. Some secrets are meant to be found. Some losses lead to salvation, and sometimes, the family you never expected is the family you've been waiting for all along.